And in entertainment news, we come to Alien Romulus, the most recent and controversial DLC for the Alien franchise, released to mixed reception and debate on social media. The original series entries Alien and Aliens released in 1979 and 1986 by artists. There have been numerous controversies surrounding the DLC's release. Several hackers revealed a shocking amount of assets were indeed reused, and with that a firestorm began. The core code was splayed across the internet for all to see, with definitive evidence of brazen reuses of world design, level design, enemy design, and much of the script from prior entries in the series, notably repurposing several iconic lines. It was very much hoped they would gain the same passion and celebration by taking prior artists' work and filtering it through a mentally challenged robot. While the release of Alien Romulus as a new map pack could be considered worthwhile, it was instead presented as a full release, labeled by the developers as an interquel or midquel, whatever the fuck that means. One of the more shocking elements as part of this disaster was that of including the full repurposing of a prior integral character played by a beloved and deceased actor Ian Holm. When asked for comment, it was simply stated, quote, "He was in the other one, and he's here too. Do you guys not like stuff?" End quote. This spiritual theft and the comment to follow was given an even more haunting context when several emails from the prior artists leaked, making clear the source of this creative constipation. And I quote, "Yes, bro, you can copy my homework, but don't make it obvious." End quote. Though the controversy does not end there, the DLC is replete with stiff, empty NPCs that the devs promise will be fixed when the character DLC releases. Several soundtrack choices were sampled from prior beloved titles, along with weapon designs and functionality being given rushed, bleached skins and attachments in order to appear somewhat original for a fraction of the monetary and mental cost of creation. These concerns were initially addressed by some fans of the DLC as homage and inspiration. However, recent developments have shown the homes associated with these accounts were situated within several significant deposits of weapons-grade copium-426. Several users tested positively for illegal levels of consumption and have since been hospitalized. And in related news, this revelation has come hot off the heels of prior controversies faced by the DLC, including areas of the world that fail to populate, such as the primary Weyland-Yutani space station map. Unfortunately abandoned despite orbiting a Weyland-Yutani-owned and operated planet. Prior to that, of course, was the use of an extremely unfavored mechanic taken from a prequel entry that to this day is seen as sinful bacteria that refuses to detach itself from the franchise. One user by the name of Ronald from BigGamerCock.com said of the mechanic, quote, "I cannot believe they brought back that retarded goo that does anything the plot wants it to do and acts as a putrid rot on a once great franchise." End quote. The DLC has also been criticized heavily for the baffling decision to reuse the most infamously glitch-ridden and outright broken final boss from one of the most maligned prior entries, prompting another user from BigGamerCock.com to comment, quote, "My god, they are so creatively pathetic that they are stealing the retarded boss fight from the one where Grima Wormtongue wants to fuck the alien." End quote. There have been numerous reports of broken AI forcing several enemies to simply approach their own deaths despite a mechanic established earlier in the game that should prevent such action. When asked, one of the developers wanted to make it clear that they had indeed played Aliens Colonial Marines and believed this was a feature, not a bug. As the days go by, and despite box office success, more and more controversies are revealed regarding this latest failure to be shoveled into an unsuspecting populace. We can only hope that reporting on it can save a few of you out there from being overwhelmingly disappointed. Though, can it be any surprise when this was organized by a studio that are now indistinguishable from the media equivalent of the Grim Reaper? Those of us reporting from Wombo News say no. And turning to sports, we now go to Mason McSillywilly for the latest scores with all of the teams. In space, no one can hear you be a retard. but you can film it. Ow! So the movie opens with telling us that the wreckage of the Nostromo, including the bloody nameplate, is floating in a nice little section of space. A little trivia for you. The Nostromo palpatined 3 fucking times. Any pieces of hull that managed to evade being atomized would have been shot over to the next fucking nebula, let alone a handful of miles. But no, it's all here, including, of course, the big chap. He's back.
From the dead.
Yes, he was obviously shot out much later from the Narcissus into space, yet now he's floating inside the wreckage too. He's waiting to be picked up and repurposed for somebody else's ill-advised Alien sequel. And so with that we have our premise. Weyland-Yutani bring the big chap back and they begin experimenting on him. And then off-screen, within a time jump, we have Rook, the station science officer, managing to 3D print facehuggers by studying the big chap's DNA. He then reverse engineered the black goo from those facehuggers and stores it ready for experimentation on other stations and planets to produce a better form of humanity able to withstand harsh environmental hazards and pressures throughout the galaxy. Only the big chap escapes and kills many people before being shot dead in the ceiling. He then bleeds into the station, causing a hull breach that Rook only manages to solve after everyone is either dead or captured. Now, this is all rather fucking bizarre to say the least, starting with Rook. Being presented as having the very same face model as Ash in the original film. They even wear the same fucking clothes, for God's sake. Wasn't Ash being an android supposed to be a surprise to the crew of the Nostromo, not standard issue? Do the 120A2s all have Ian Holmes' face? And that means, going forward from Alien, the specific Ash-looking androids were in commission for 20 years after the malfunction, despite Bishop telling us they were notoriously twitchy and obviously outdated by subsequent models. What the fuck? More importantly, however, at the moment Rook solves the problem and seals the breach, everyone is dead. How is that the case? Wouldn't it be that many people are dead? And how is it that Rook was the one to close off the hull breach when he was hit with the very acid that ended up breaching the hull in the first place? How didn't he get sucked out? They find him at the hull. The implication is he didn't take a single action after being hit with the alien blood. That would have meant he couldn't have done anything about the hull breach. And wouldn't the big chap have been sucked out too? What about all the random bits and bobs that are still in the station? Did any sucking even happen? Don't take that out of context. Anyway, how the fuck was the alien having acid blood a surprise to the scientists? The space truckers figured it out in 10 minutes. You guys had an army of facehuggers to study. You never did a single test on their blood? This wonderful advanced team of scientists are so fucking stupid they probably think Cheerios are donut seeds. Like, why the fuck are there even humans in this dumbass station? Why wouldn't Weyland-Yutani do all of this with synthetics? The aliens can't do shit with synthetic bodies. You'd essentially cancel out their entire life cycle, and synthetics are stronger. Using humans for this particular scientific operation is so inherently retarded. Wait a minute. All of this experimentation and sacrifice is to further advance humanity's survivability in hostile planetary environments in order to facilitate galactic colonization, right? So why the fuck are you wasting billions on insane experimentation that fails every damn time to do something you already have the solution to? Use the synthetics. They are stronger, smarter, faster. Walter could regenerate and he's a fucking old model at this point. They don't need all kinds of normal protections and they are insanely loyal. Also, is it not extremely disappointing that you painstakingly, through secrets only the Sith knew, brought the big chap back only to then kill him off screen, crawling through a ceiling or whatever the fuck was supposed to be happening here? Wait, hang on. How the fuck does it make sense that you can draw pieces of DNA from the big chap to make new face huggers, and then you get the black goo from the huggers that you printed? What process even is that? This is the most pathetic way to gain access to distant prequel mechanics nobody even wants to see. Mechanics that have already been given a roadmap in this frail, frumpy, feckless, face fucked Flanderized Frankenstein franchise. What the fuck doesn't even cover it? How is it that Rook basically cracked the genetic code down to the atom of alien biology with one specimen to the point of printing these fuckers, while the cunts from the station in Resurrection in the far-flung future with almost unlimited access to genuine aliens, queens, eggs, and facehuggers couldn't? Also, I can't be the only one that feels 3D printing aliens is doing a fucking number on their mystique, their nature, right? Like, why can't we make movies that are... Okay, so printing facehuggers means you have stored data down to their DNA being written in code and transferable on top of housing about a bazillion of them in storage, with this enormous operation having been conducted, recorded, and helmed as the great research to help generate superhumans that can colonize distant worlds, yes? Should that not mean the capacity to print aliens is now in code that can be transferred in the form of a fucking USB stick? Or perhaps in the form of a fucking email? How's that for the sad state of this sorry fucking franchise? If all that's true, how the fuck did all of this data, all of that understanding, and all of those resources not make it out of the station? You're telling me they didn't want to store backups of any of this? They didn't want to conduct additional experiments anywhere else? They didn't even want to see the data? We got civilization-altering revelations here, and not only did they not have anything sent out, they didn't have any contact check-ins, to the point this dumb fucking station can be entirely abandoned and is randomly floating into a planet ring? If only they were lucky enough to float above a Weyland-Yutani-controlled planet, am I right? Oh, but they fucking were! If only they had the ability to contact HQ when the big fucking chap was wreaking havoc. Oh wait, they could have! Rook literally does this at the end of the dumb piss-flap bacterial fucking baguette of a movie. What the fuck? It's like their brains caught on fire and someone put it out with a hammer. Stupidity isn't a crime, but maybe it should be. Though that's not it. There's so much more. 3D printing facehuggers lends itself to an understanding of aliens so incredible that Weyland-Yutani would have had full and detailed assessments of alien biology from back to front prior to the events of Aliens, changing the course of that story entirely. They would know so much more. They would know what they're dealing with, and they would have all the samples and examples they would need. This is incompatible with their approach and their interest in the movie. But don't worry, you're supposed to believe that nothing on this station makes it back to Weyland-Yutani. They can fucking fish the alien out of space, but they can't find their own space station floating above their own planets. Makes complete sense to me. And you know what? That's the lore. That's the background of this film, and it's entirely broken. But hey, there's the story that actually happens on screen, so now let's talk about that. On the planet below live many disgruntled Weyland-Yutani workers, tired from the abuse of the company. They are now thinking about sneaking into the station above, stealing cryotubes and traveling to another system to live happily ever after. You see, Rain really wants to see the sun, and after spotting a canary heading down the mine, yes, she's the bird. She sees herself as the fucking bird, okay? Rain is the bird in the cage is Rain and wants to see the sun. Just making sure you all get that. Now, I have no idea why this collection of idiots are the first to try and scavenge this abandoned space station, nor do I have any clue why Weyland-Yutani themselves haven't done anything about this when world-altering research has potentially been cracked on there. Regardless, Team Brain Trust want our main character Rain because she has an adopted brother called Andy, who is a Weyland-Yutani android found in the trash and reprogrammed by Rain's father before he died. His prime directive is to do whatever is best for her. Apparently, Weyland-Yutani androids can gain access to almost anything related to the company, and so they want him for the job. Once Rain is convinced, they all make their way in, and through many security checks thanks to Andy's clearance. It all just works. But you gotta admit, that's pretty fucking stupid, eh? You're telling me there's no notifications, authorization, control, or checks for ships entering and leaving company-controlled space. Why wouldn't there be any rising interest or contact when seeing this ship dock with the space station above? How the fuck are these idiots the first to do it when there is is a gold mine's worth of resources to be gained by getting into that station. You want me to believe there's no other way in than Weyland-Yutani androids passing security? Because I don't. However, if that is the case, why the fuck would the company have tossed Andy in a dump for random scavengers to find if he functions as a Swiss Army knife for all of their operations? Obviously, they would repair him or recycle him. This isn't Fury 161. The prisoners don't even know what to do with Bishop, and he was torn to shreds. Could you imagine how fucked up this whole world would be if Weyland-Yutani were tossing skeleton keys out to their most valuable black site research and military stations for the hell of it? What the fuck is going on with this script? Underestimating it has become an impossibility. This retarded writing move allows the gaggle of gastric wombles to scurry about the station, leading to their inevitable and hilarious deaths, of course, because as you know, we can't have our horror movie unless everyone is stupid. Except in all of the most famous and greatest horror movies of our time. Just ignore those ones. Even upon approach, Rain spots the sun beyond the oppressive atmosphere of the company-controlled planet. And you remember for another moment that she is indeed the bird in the cage, and that bird will fly free one way or another. Moving swiftly on, our team needs freezy fuel for the cryopods. Obviously, you would think these pods would be fully stocked since they haven't been used, and this station's history is that of everyone dying or being sucked out. But if that somehow isn't the case, the capacity to refuel them would be in the same location, no? That in the very cryo-stasis area, with the cryo-stasis pods that need refueling after use, one might store the capacity to refuel them there? Well, no. It's actually stored with the facehuggers. Whoever wrote this must have been a very slippery baby. Had the cryopods been stored in an area with the capacity to refuel them, we would have mercifully reached the end of the movie. Better luck next time. If only there were information they could take advantage of, to lead them to safe ways to acquire the fuel, or to at the very least warn them of what was stored in the facehugger room. A relatively simple fact that passes them by completely despite having a fucking android and an interest in remaining as covert as possible while doing the whole thing as efficiently as they can. Literally just read a console or look around at the fucking menagerie of horrifying alien creatures in the room, you dumb British goblin gorgonite fuck. Yeah, that's a reference and a half. Instead of using a single brain cell, we instead see a cryofuel tracker. It's just like aliens. And that simply happens to lead him to the worst cryofuel prospect on the ship? What the fuck? Now, unfortunately for our team of heroes, Weyland-Yutani stored the facehuggers the same way I might stack a few store-bought curries in the freezer. Only at least if my freezer stops working, my curries can't break out and implant offspring that bursts out and causes a big old fountain of bodily fluids to spray across the room. Well, not in the same way. So, the facehuggers are freed, causing some shenanigans. This is because the characters remove a fuel rod from the cooling unit in the film. This all goes so wrong, the facehuggers' storage temperature rockets up to 77 degrees Fahrenheit and climbing. Why would it happen when it's storing one of the most dangerous parasites in the history of humanity? What the fuck were Weyland Retardi thinking by having a system that if one of 6 cryofuel cells to power the cryostasis gets removed, the system not only stops working entirely, but reverses and starts cooking the creatures right up and ready to kill you? If this script were any further inbred, it would be a fucking sandwich. A facehugger then latches on to one of the interchangeable idiots, and instead of checking to see, right now, if she was implanted with the very device she uses to do so much later, they bicker, and the British brain vacuum decides to abandon the whole team except his girlfriend because he thinks the android might try to kill them. All of this because Andy said we shouldn't bring the possible monster on board. It's actually hilarious just how cosmically fucking dense everyone is in this scene, since had they put her right into cryostasis, she would have been alive until they could find a team to surgically remove the alien. And that's if there's no way of doing it on this very station, which, to be honest, there likely is. Instead, she was impregnated, the hugger was torn from her face, which also shouldn't couldn't be possible, and the little guy bursts out all within bloody minutes. Because this film can't be bothered to meaningfully remember fuck all from the movie it's desperately stealing from. But as much as all of this is a complete mess, you have nothing to worry about. It's going to get significantly worse. The chest bursting makes the lady kick her controls, and so the ship crashes. First into a station thruster, activating it and sending them on a finer deadline to ultimate destruction in the form of the planet's ring tearing the station asunder, to then accidentally and randomly crash again. Where, you ask? Oh, just safely into the docking bay, because, you know, writing. From there you get the obligatory rehash of Don't Breathe, where the facehuggers only react to changes in heat and sound, so the team alter the room temperature to match their bodies down to the decimal point, when all three of these fuckers would have wildly different body temperatures at that level, and the doors open up into the fucking station. There is a hole in the ceiling, my man. A giant fuck-off hole. One that's said to go through most of the whole-ass station. I think it's safe to say temperature might just travel through these areas. What the fuck? Where has this movie been all my life? I wish it was still there. So this plan somehow works, or it would have if Team Brain Trust member number 2 hadn't accepted a fucking phone call from the retard who couldn't pick up her keys from the floor. Ugh, man, I skipped over the British brain stump who decided to bathe himself in acid blood because he wanted out of this story more than I did. He keeps getting hit with droplets of acid and he just stays where he is. Darwin Awards, I suppose. Ow! Anyway, Andy has managed to be upgraded now. We finally have a worthwhile character in the story who can make decisions that are interesting and thought out. He refuses to open the door to Shouting Lady because the alien is with her and it would kill them all if he let it through. So she gets impaled, dragged off, perhaps to return in a shittier scene. As a result, Rain is mad at Andy for being right. It seems Rain wants to convert him back so that his primary directive is protecting her instead of doing whatever is best for the company. Only she doesn't seem to realize that wouldn't have changed anything about his decision. Protecting her, or doing what is best for her, means not opening that fucking door. And these stupid fucks are hyperventilating about it as though it's some horrifying thing Andy did as opposed to simply correct. Had this decision been made with the first impregnated TARD explorer, none of them would have been in this situation. But no, the scene has to break its fucking back to have the characters ignore the imminent death Andy just saved them from, to instead have a second to ponder the ethics of cold computer calculus run in favor of an evil corporation, which perhaps reveals something of an alternative commentary on the film's part, whether accidental or not, that corporations are responsible for suffering in significant societal, systemic, and personal ways, but that humanity is feckless and dim-witted enough to shoot themselves in the head and blame corporations for the blood seeping out of the fucking void between their ears. God, I miss Aliens. The influence and the impact and the interest from the corporation in those scenes, in that operation, was so much more considered. The film had so much more to say, and of course the same goes for Alien. Now we get the wonky photocopy, bereft of style and insight, instead flavored with clown spice, crumpled up, thrown in the garbage, only to be recollected, repurposed, and slapped onto the screen. The demented and lobotomized walrus that constructed this scene makes onions cry. Their birth certificate is an apology letter from the condom factory, and it's regrettable that someone must have left their cage open. Anyway, moving on. Rook wants the team to get the black goo to the ship and get out of there before the station hits the ring. On their way, they discover Screaming Lady. Andy concludes she isn't impregnated because there's no dead facehugger on the floor. That's a fascinating bit of thinking, isn't it? It's almost as though he shouldn't know to conclude anything from that. Andy was explicit in that his knowledge hasn't changed, just his credentials, AI, and motor functions. Not only has he not been told what happens to a facehugger when it successfully impregnates someone, we now know the one he actually saw successfully impregnate someone ran the fuck off. There are several people in these very walls who have been chest bursted, and only half of them have a facehugger corpse near them. Sounds like a lot of conflicting data. So what the fuck is he talking about? They had him believe and announce this against all reason in order to protect Screaming Lady from being impregnated. For now, at least, before a different retarded payoff can take place. The idea is that a facehugger wouldn't latch on to her because she's too close to bleeding out, when we all know a fucking facehugger wouldn't give a shit. Whatever. Next up, the guy dies. James. No, Tim? Tyler. Tanner. Tom. No, it was Tyler. Yeah, Tyler's dead now.
Oh no! Anyway.
Rain ends up trapped with Andy while Screamy gets to the ship and injects some black goo to prevent bleeding out. Yes, it's all very stupid, I don't even want to get into it. Rain then switches off the gravity and shoots just about 20 to 30 aliens all in a barrel, splashing their blood in every direction you can imagine. Like, that's the whole reason she turned gravity off, to prevent the blood from splashing down and through the hull into space, even though they clearly show it's heading in all directions, hitting all walls with the blood of as many as 30 fucking aliens. They treat the blood as though it's a fucking DVD screensaver, bouncing away from the walls until the gravity comes back on. Like it won't forcibly start splashing into the surroundings the second these fuckers are being blown away by even a pulse rifle wannabe. Anyway, a kind and considerate alien then rescues Rain from a fall in order for them to steal yet another better fucking scene than anything this slimy botched clone could ever produce. And yes, Alien 3 is of course the far better movie, it's not even close. Clemens alone clears every character in this fucking dreck. So all the aliens die in a contrived mess of hull breaches being randomly ignored, bullet counts lucking out, plot armor galore, and a truly horrifying delivery of one of the most famously beloved cinematic fucking master lines in history.
Get away from her. You bitch. Shut up! Get away. Shut up!
And so they escape, and they refuse to complete Rook's plan of delivering the black goo to Weyland-Yutani, making him cope and seethe and piss and shit and deliver an embarrassing villain speech where he says, "Now you listen here, you two, you are insignificant in the great scheme." Ah, man. Anyway, the team live happily ever after. Only the creators then decide to steal the fucking newborn scene from Alien Resurrection. Slender Man pops in for a visit. Grown from a little engineer goober baby to full size in a matter of seconds, causing myself and many others to double over in laughter at the titanic clownery this fourth act is willing to splatter on screen. Though perhaps there's still some horror to be found for this pale stick in that its development has punted the very laws of thermodynamics so far out of the stratosphere it makes the film's disdain for cause and effect look cute. And then Rain steals another line. And so the lanky cunt falls into space, only for Rain to drift into the future, like a bird freed from a cage, to be cast in several Alien Romulus sequels, much to my chagrin. But hey, at least we got the credits. This whole story is an excessive look into angry retards creating problems for themselves until assorted alien member berries can kill them. The point the film wants to make is an exploration of familial connections and the responsibility one has to their siblings, whether blood or bound by circumstance. Something it fails miserably at achieving, in that most people have no idea what everyone's connections even are in this film, and the few ethical choices that relate to sibling care are laughable. The plot is riddled with holes and stretches, struggling to justify itself with a strong smell of having given up from the get-go under the desperation from getting the movie monster star of the show back as the thrust of the narrative while creating a scenario that breaks at every point of pressure. There wouldn't be a story if the cryo-stasis had sufficient charge, if the refueling for the cryopods was stored reasonably, if the other 5 fuel rods weren't disabled after the first one is removed, if the team just checked what was in the room, if the room didn't begin to superheat the facehuggers after the fuel rod was removed, if the room didn't lock people in with the rapidly thawing super parasites, if the door didn't break in such a way that an arm-sized crack appeared in the middle. Had they woken up and spoken to Rook before they collected the fuel, the whole film would just stop. And that's just a selection from 10 minutes worth of story. As for world building, this whole thing fits into the world of Alien about as well as stuffing Boogie's sweat-drenched flesh prison into an active blender, desperate to be a part of this beloved timeline, situating itself between the 2 greatest entries of the franchise, yet damaging salvaging every last piece of connective tissue it hopelessly and selfishly latches onto, a wretched bit of world building acting as a tumor to an already abused and broken world. But what about the characters? Well, you see, Rain is the bird in the cage, and she wants to get out there and see the sun, to be free, and to just live her life from the shackles of Weyland-Yutani, like a bird escaping a cage. They achieve this very effectively by telling us she wants to see the sun about 14 times through dreams, dialogue, visions, fun facts about the planet. Even the fucking text on screen can't resist telling you there's no sun here to really drive it home. But if you missed all of that, just make sure to remember they have her spot a canary heading down to a mine. Because she is the bird in the cage. This symbolizes her life and the fleeting opportunity to escape it. Much like a bird whose cage is ajar, and the opportunity for flight lies within the courage to ask the simple question, am I the bird in the cage? I wonder, had she not seen the canary, would she have made a decision, even though we haven't used canaries for as long as 3 decades in our own world? I suppose you have synthetic people wobbling about in this world, but a carbon monoxide sensor is just out of the fucking cards. Speaking of which, other than the many instances of sheer luck found throughout the film, it is woefully unsatisfying that the only moment in her life that she would accept the insane job her friends have a tiny window to take advantage of would be right now. Other than that, she spends most of the movie letting it happen to her. The one big decision made nearer to the end, the one ripping off aliens entirely, is void of any stakes by having every last alien mysteriously disappear until the plot can once again protect her by having the fucking aliens soften her fall and protect her before lining up for the camera. There's not much of any particular scene I remember for her performance, and most of her survival is handed to her. Andy is so much more the standout, but only because he is made intelligent. The movie is allowed to have at least 1 or 2 moments with a character that can actually make meaningful decisions instead of an entire cast doing an extended impression of a headless chicken riddled with AIDS. Speaking of, the rest of the cast is entirely without a chance to shine except Isabella Merced. As previously mentioned, she has a memorable scream or two. The biggest compliment comes in for the aesthetic, the props, the sets, the atmosphere, the effort to connect itself to the world of Alien, the well-executed part of that anyway. Though the practical facehuggers were a notable downgrade in the movement department, we did not realize how good we had it. Practical effects are not binary in quality. You can be practical and you can be shitty. Regardless, the biggest takeaway is the movie wants you to remember the feelings you had when watching incredible films. It wants you to spot and clap at the references to then try and snatch those feelings for itself. For instance, there are tons of Easter eggs in the form of identically composed shots. The landing, the escape sequence, the facehugger jump scares, the impaling, the incoming aliens to follow, Andy crawling like Bishop, the cryo-fuel scanner matching the motion sensor, being under the grate to escape an alien like Newt, the boop Ripley gives Newt, the aperture vents, the Reeboks. Well, the whole bit there's just entirely ripped off, isn't it? You got the bar sign, the chess pieces being Bishop and Rook, even though I thought the whole idea was Bishop was Wayland's middle name. Whatever. You got the Drinky Bird, Rain being shown the pulse rifle just like Ripley. Rain getting into the spacesuit for the final showdown just like Ripley. The bloody harpoon sitting in the big chap's corpse, and how the film obsessively points it out to you because it's so fucking proud of itself, even though the scientists would obviously remove that shit when experimenting on an alien. The newborn being ripped off with the offspring. I prefer the term artificial
myself.
I can't lie to you about your chances. You have my sympathies.
Busy little creatures, huh?
And of course, the one I no longer wish to speak about. And let's not forget the signing off voiceover at the end. Ellen Ripley provided an assessment of the job as rendered and the repercussions, with a focus on the lost life to reflect her professionalism, her humanity, the practicality of being found, and the uncertain future, repurposed here by Rain when she wasn't even a fucking flight officer. She wouldn't even know how or why she would need to record this. Who the fuck are you recording that for? Ripley did it to ensure a record for the expectation of being picked up by the network, but you repeated this because it's in the original and the sequel. The soundtrack is also a hodgepodge of prior films, and much like this cavalcade of references, it kinda starts to make you realize something. This movie, this story, is barely more than an attempt to finally make a dwindling IP marketable and profitable again, and it's far from the first attempt. It doesn't just bother me that the movie is horrendously written, and believe me, I've only covered a sliver of the writing issues and the rampant fucking disrespect. It also bothers me in a bit of a meta way. It strikes me as something of a great example in how things work. Something crystallized by Nutzer, a friend that said something so casually yet so true in a random conversation. When it comes to most bad sequels, you either get The Force Awakens from JJ or you get The Last Jedi from Ryan. One being the hyperslop generated to please the masses with familiar sights and sounds, avoiding controversial topics with no explicit purpose in theme, story, or fucking meaning for that matter. A happy meal for the franchise that you gobble up and forget in mere moments, and then when you go to the toilet that night you remember and you regret. The other being an experimental and often abstract re-examining that deconstructs with poor precision and fails to pick up the pieces afterward. A sad yet spicy meal for the franchise, taking it apart violently and angrily shitting and pissing all over it to provide a heavy helping of food poisoning, having you shoot fountains from all ends only to gain a niche fan base calling you the next Kubrick when the resemblance is more of a cinematic Jackson Pollock if his brain were replaced with a fine burnt hair flavored gravy. For example, Jurassic World, that's a JJ. Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, that's more of a Ryan. Terminator Dark Fate, that's a Ryan. Terminator Genesis, more of a JJ. The Predator, that's a Ryan. Prey, that's a JJ. Ghostbusters Afterlife? Absolutely a JJ, same with the sequel. Prometheus? Absolutely a Ryan, same with the sequel. Ghostbusters 2016? Nobody knows what the fuck that was, never speak of it again. Dial of Destiny? Oh boy, you bet that's a Ryan. Deadpool and Wolverine? That's a JJ. It's kind of a dichotomy between a member-berry monsoon and a deconstructive disaster, or sometimes a mix of both. The key factor being a lack of substantive storytelling in favor of appealing to very surface-level iconography. We've seen it to hell and back with Star Wars, Star Trek, Doctor Who, Lord of the Rings, and even things like Alien. There are countless examples of this happening everywhere, so very few legacy sequels even try to respect what came before, support what came before, build on what came before, while standing out and giving itself the fucking respect it deserves. And I think we may just be cursed with bobbing between these two alternatives, and the studios will realize that the JJ route will always be, at least initially, more profitable. We are absolutely at the point of comfortably complaining that this mess of a movie is a mangled collection of hollow remixing in a franchise so long in the tooth, the notion of watching the original for several newer moviegoers is akin to a dry history lesson, which is a fucking shame, but there we are. New sensibilities, new interests, and new ways to exploit old artwork. I suppose my primary gripe here is that I don't see a path for growth in these franchises when products like this are seen as ahead of the curve. It's breathing new life and reaching success in the box office. So why innovate? Why try? Why not devolve, repeat, and franchise your way back into making some money again? Why bother to do anything other than create an alien clip show conducted by the newest generation of actors making a mockery of what was once suffered through by incredible talent trying to simply see the look on the audience faces, to convince them, even for a second, to make them wonder. It's the spookiest time of year, and what's more suitable than EFAP celebrating with a brand new set of terrifying plushies? Introducing the EFAP Halloween plushie set, starting with Mauler the Longpire, a terrifying monster of bloodthirst and long. This cuddly beast is both infamous and primal in his desire to drain the very soul from the world of media, and he's coming for you. But he's not alone. How could the Longpire be complete without his trusty doggo, Ragzolantern? Poised charmingly in his pumpkin, your Ragzolantern will be there to offer his support and encouragement and sarcastic commentary to all your endeavors. This gourd-adorned Shiba Inu will give your pumpkin patch a pantalooned pooch's worth of company, and of course, both of these fine, fiendish fellows are joined by yet another. Though his eyes may have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, Fringy the Raven will gladly perch atop your couch, cuddly and at the ready. This corvid ventures nowhere without his scythe, and he's more than ready to slash his way through all obstacles. But not without the final member of this cutthroat cohort. Hear the bell as it strikes the hour of the wolf. When the midnight sky is red, a beast shall emerge from the forest to plunder your local pizza parlor. Behold, the dreaded werewolf, complete with the sunken eyes of a beast who avoids the searing heat of the sun, carrying with him a slice of his latest victim. This legend of the night will surely be a fantastic addition to this crew of dark demons and pumpkin playmates. But that's not all, no sir. Have you ever left home only to worry you're leaving the members of your favorite podcast behind? Do you despair when Mauler's commentary, Fringy's laughs, Wolf's fury, or Rags's puns aren't around anymore? Well, anguish no longer. Now you can stay warm and cozy during those chilly autumn days while constantly explaining to everyone that, no, it's not electronic fapping, I swear. Introducing the official Every Frame a Pause Halloween hoodie. Perfect for lounging around indoors, shopping, long walks on the pier, weddings, baby showers, funerals, Halloween, Christmas. Complete with the expected furnishings of the season, as well as some gorgeous artwork by Black Soul Odin. The EFAP hoodie is ready to keep you warm and comfy through those winter months. There may even be a surprise guest on the back. Pick up yours today, because once the campaign ends, it'll be gone for good. And don't forget Mauler the Longpire, Ragzolantern, Fringy the Raven, and Werewolf. Completing the EFAP Halloween set. For every item you pick up together, the discount will increase. Be sure about what you'd like before it's too late, as the spooky season will not last forever. Find them all at makeship.com/shop/EFAP. All links can be found in the description. Thank you all so much for watching and supporting the show. We will see you next time. Oh, she was the bird in the cage.